Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Sally Burdett, live from Johannesburg. In your headlines this evening, an explosion at Denel's Somerset West munitions factory leaves 8 people dead. We'll be going live to the scene in just a moment.
Minister Mtambi had ripped my scars of torture completely.
Acting GCIS head Pumla Williams says life was torture working for former Communications Minister Faith Muthambi, and she's accusing her of stealing. Testimony today from the Zondo Commission into state capture. And government steps in to save motorists the pain of another petrol price hike. It will absorb most of this month's increase. Of course, we also have sport and business news. It's a very good evening to Moteo Gripe, Jeffrey Stevens.
Good evening, Sally. Coming up, Bafana Bafana midfield trio withdraw from the squad to face Libya this weekend due to injuries.
Well, on the economic front, manufacturing sector still a concern as the country awaits the announcement of second quarter GDP numbers on Tuesday.
More on those stories later. Thank you, gentlemen. But let's start our bulletin in Somerset West in the Western Cape. And at least 8 people have been killed after an explosion at the Denel munitions factory this afternoon. Emergency workers are working to remove all the workers from the premises. Family members of the workers have gathered outside the factory awaiting news. My colleague Peladi Situsa is on the scene. We cross live to her now. Evening, Peladi. Has the site been secured? Have emergency personnel been actually allowed into the site at this time?
Evening, Sally. So what we've heard so far from the Provincial Health Department and Emergency Services here in the Western Cape is that the site is still being secured. So work is still being done to secure the site, and as such, work for emergency services is going a bit slower than expected. We know that initially after the blast, the immediate work was to get out any survivors from that, and we're told that all the people who do work at this plant have been accounted for at this point, so no missing persons still being looked for on site. But at the moment we only know about those 8 fatalities. We don't know account for injuries or exactly how many people were actually affected by this explosion this afternoon.
So Peladi, just to confirm, it is 8 people dead but no possibility of any more bodies being found?
I mean, it's possible because we don't understand what happened at the explosion site. So anything could have happened from parts of the factory caving in, other parts being affected by the blast. So we haven't been able to assess that kind of damage from a visual point of view. So they also haven't confirmed any of that with us at the moment. But we are told that authorities will come out in a few hours to give us some more details on who was affected and how. But at the moment, we're still sort of in limbo with those scant details that we have.
Peladi, obviously you don't have full details, but what do you know of the possibilities of what caused this explosion earlier this afternoon in Somerset West at the Denel factory? Any clues as to what might have gone wrong?
So the thing is, what we're told from some family members who are outside and saying they know people who work here and who have worked here for years is they make components for explosives and ammunition for military use. So you can imagine those are quite volatile pieces that people are working with, and quite unstable elements essentially that people work with and package here every day. We are told from some of the people who live nearby that they're always scared for the people who work here because of some of the substances and parts that they work with on a daily basis, and that this is actually not the first incident at a plant like this.
Thank you so much. That's Peladi Situsa. She's live outside the Denel munitions factory in Somerset West. 8 people confirmed dead. No clear answers as to exactly what happened to cause that explosion this afternoon. Well, it's been an emotional day at the state capture inquiry. The acting Director General at government's communications arm, GCIS, says former President Jacob Zuma protected former Communications Minister Faith Muthambi at all costs. Now, today, Pumla Williams described a climate of fear in government communications so bad, she says it revived her trauma of being tortured by apartheid police. Meanwhile, Zuma has not applied to cross-examine witnesses who've implicated him in their testimony. His son, Duduzane, has done so, along with two Gupta brothers. Here's Erin Bates with more.
Minister Mtambi had ripped my scars of torture completely. Chairperson, I was no longer sleeping. I had nightmares. I was reliving my situation. My facial twitches were back. I had panic attacks. I saw torture going through my body again. I never thought in this government people can do such things. I was tortured for weeks, and Mtambi did the same thing to my body.
Pumla Williams says it was torture working at GCIS when Faith Mtambi was Minister of Communications. She's accused Mtambi of bullying her and cheating the state.
She wanted that procurement at all costs. She wanted to steal at all costs. That removing of all those functions, it was a ploy to remove the finance and procurement away from me. And they decided that the procurement and the finances must be removed from this woman. And that's basically what they did.
The inquiry heard GCIS was systematically weakened, especially when it came to who controlled the money. Between 2011 and 2018, GCIS paid 55 million rand for breakfasts hosted by the Gupta-owned newspaper The New Age. She's glad to have spoken up and hopes Zuma and Mtambi will testify.
President Zuma knows how I went through. She knows exactly my pain of torture. So I don't understand why would he actually keep quiet and not intervene.
Yeah, he was your comrade in the struggle, and he said nothing when you were tortured in democracy.
That's right. And then in the democracy, I still have to go through that same torture. Maybe the difference is that it was not beating, but I was going through the same torture. And it was a joke to them. It was okay. Yeah, we sorted it out, you know.
The inquiry's legal team is arming itself to argue why those who want to cross-examine witnesses should be compelled to testify. Erin Bates, Parktown.
To KwaZulu-Natal, and news just in this evening is that a body believed to be that of missing Sydenham schoolboy Miguel Lowe has been found in Phoenix, Durban. Now, the boy was last seen in the company of Mohammed Ibrahim in July. He's been accused of kidnapping the boy. The police say while the body has not been officially confirmed as that of Miguel Lowe, the family was called to the scene of the discovery earlier. Now, the body was discovered accidentally by police while they were chasing a suspect. Meanwhile, police in the Western Cape have put together a task team to deal with child abductions. This follows an increase in children snatched from schools, malls and other public spaces. Now, in some cases, they're taken, assaulted and then dropped off some hours or even days later, but others are lured into cars and never seen again. Well, some better news now, and it's official. You can eat your polony quarters and your ham sandwiches once again with confidence. Today, health officials confirm they've put a lid on listeriosis, the bacteria which causes deadly food poisoning. Claimed over 200 lives earlier this year, but Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says with no new cases reported in the last 3 months, the disease is contained.
We've done all the investigation. Tiger Brands has hired some of the international experts. They've done every inspection that is ever needed. Nobody could pinpoint and say this listeria came in this way. We still don't know. But we're just happy that the outbreak is over. Today's announcement then means that ready-to-eat processed meat can now be safely consumed.
Now, some sort of good news for motorists and commuters. The Energy Department says government will absorb most of this month's fuel price increase. Petrol will increase by only 5 cents a litre on Wednesday, despite the fact that internationally the price of fuel is being pushed higher. Wednesday's 5 cents a litre increase will go towards the annual salary increases of forecourt attendants, cashiers and other staff. There's no hike for diesel or illuminating paraffin this month. Ahead on eNews, a Myanmar judge jails journalists covering the Rohingya killings for 7 years. Of course, we also have money news with Mateo.
Well, the local market ending the day flat as heavyweight Naspers disappoints today on the market. All of that after the break.
Money news now with Mateo. Hi there, Mateo. Now today, the Purchasing Managers Index came in for August. Bad news. Why is this so important?
Well, ABSA's PMI came out today, and it basically looks at the activity in the manufacturing sector. Why it's important? Well, it's one of the biggest sectors in South Africa is manufacturing. About last month, we saw it drop a lot of jobs, and it's one of those sectors the market often relies on it to bring up the GDP or growth numbers for the country. So it was retail numbers that were down and also manufacturing numbers that were down. And this is really speculative towards the GDP number coming out on Tuesday, that it might mean a bad result for GDP numbers as well.
If it is a second quarter of negative growth, we are technically in recession. Do you think that's going to happen, Mateo?
Yes, it would be a technical recession if it's a second consecutive, downward trend for GDP. Analysts say they're expecting 0.5% in terms of growth, so that would steer us away from a recession. Right. But it's too close to call at this moment. And if it does happen, then it would, take away the plans that the president has had in terms of creating jobs and bringing investments into the country. Such
positive news coming from China, investment, that sort of thing. It really is a tricky one. Let's look at the markets now. And the rand has had an appalling day against the pound. It's been an appalling day, but when you look at the market in general, there was a public holiday in the United States, and that saw some marginal trade. Usually it's at 13 billion in terms of money exchange. Today's was at 24 billion. The all share up just marginally. Industrials also up 0.5%, while financials are down on the day. And in terms of the gold trade and mining shares, they were up today, up more than 0.5%, and platinum bringing a stronger performance to the market, while resources ended the day up 1%. And that rand, of course, at 14.83 rand, at one point close to that 15 rand mark against the dollar. It's at 17.23 rand against the euro, a number we haven't seen for quite a while. And at 19 rand 10 cent, really edging close to that 20 rand mark against the pound. When were we last at 19 rand to the pound? I could say probably a year ago. It's a number we haven't seen in quite a bit. And also straining there on the rand is that Turkish lira as well. And in terms of the commodity prices, gold now at $1,201 an ounce, and platinum also not impressing the market too much. But there's that oil price that is bringing up the price of fuel that the government is struggling with. It's at $78.09 currently. But at least the government's giving us a month-long reprieve. They're not going to give us a huge whack increase this coming month. Definitely. Thank you so much, Mateo Gripe, giving us all the numbers. Let's now look at international news. And human rights group Reporters Without Borders is calling for the immediate release of 2 journalists sentenced to 7 years in prison. A Myanmar judge found the Reuters reporters guilty of breaching the country's Official Secrets Act. Now, the reporters, Walun and Cho Su, say they're innocent. They were arrested while investigating the killing of Rohingya villagers. Reporters Without Borders is calling on Myanmar leader and Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi to step in and help the jailed journalists. Let's look at your top story again. An explosion at Denell's Somerset West arms factory leaves 8 dead this evening. To Cape Town we go, and it's a very good evening to Candice McKechnie, who's going to give us all our weather news. First week of spring. The blossoms are blossoming here in Johannesburg. It's quite lovely.
Well, yes, indeed, Sally. You do have lovely weather in the northeastern part of South Africa at the moment. But this week, we're experiencing all 4 seasons, and I'm going to take you through some of them. In fact, we're expecting a cold front tomorrow in the Western Cape. It's a large cold front, so it'll bring in cloudy, wet, cold and windy conditions with it. You'll see it only moves in the second part of the day, but it's really going to bring back that winter chill. Ahead of the front, we're expecting warmer temperatures over the central and southeastern parts, and of course that sunny and hot weather that you're experiencing in Gauteng will continue into Tuesday. Here's a look at your countrywide forecast, where temperatures still stay warm over the eastern part of the Northern Cape, around 30 degrees for quite a few of those weather stations. After that cold snap of air in the west, 13 for Springbok. A wintry days in store for the Western Cape. Most of the rain in the forecast in the southwest. 16 for Cape Town and Langebaan, but warm for Beaufort West and Oudtshoorn at 27. A sunny and warmer days in store throughout the Eastern Cape. Most highs head into the middle and upper 20s here. You'll also see fine and hot weather for KwaZulu-Natal, 30 degrees for Ladysmith, Vryheid and Ulundi. It'll be a fine and dry day throughout Mpumalanga. Quite chilly to start off the day on the high velds, but with the highs in the mid-20s for Mbekazeni and Ermelo. Hot for the low velds. Sunshine continues for Limpopo, Polokwane at 30, with Lephalale and Messina both at 34 degrees. Fine and dry as we head towards the northwest. Mahikeng and Potchefstroom topping 31, with those minimum temperatures still dropping into the single digits. A pleasant afternoon for the Free State, 27 for Bloemfontein, Bethlehem and Harrismith both at 25 degrees. Sunny and warm for Gauteng on Tuesday, just shy of 30 in Vereeniging, with Pretoria topping 30 degrees and Johannesburg at 28. On Wednesday, you'll see a sizzling hot day into KwaZulu-Natal, 34 degrees for Pietermaritzburg, 37 for Richards Bay. After that cold snap of air, bringing in cloudy, cold and wet weather over the western and southern parts. And on Thursday, that really settles in with the possibility of snow on the Cape Mountain tops. Thundershowers are expected for Mahikeng and Bloemfontein, but highs remain in the low 30s in the northeast. That's all from me for tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Candice McKechnie in Cape Town. And finally, golf is still a male-dominated sport here in South Africa, but Bella Modisha has her sights set on changing all that. She's the only black female in the country with a PGA qualification. Oji Molefe caught up with this trailblazer.
Bella Modisha accidentally fell in love with the game of golf. A chance visit to a school by the South African Golf Development Board sparked a love affair with the sport. But she quickly learned after matric that prospects of a woman pursuing golf as a viable career path in South Africa were very slim.
The whole journey coming to where I am now has been very difficult, especially with the disappointment of not having sponsorships to pursue the touring side of the game. So I had to then rethink my strategy. Do I stay in golf, or do I do what other people do and just give up and go and try something else altogether?
She did give up to pursue a degree in information technology. But that plan lasted only a few months, and Modisha decided to go back to the game she loved so dearly. It was while she was studying towards getting her Professional Golfers Association qualification that she fell in love with teaching the game of golf. And she went on to become the first and only black female in South Africa with a PGA qualification.
My personal goal is to have my own academy and to help out in my community and the communities that are disadvantaged and don't have access to this beautiful game.
Oji Molefe, Johannesburg.
Inspiring stuff. Before we go, a recap of your top story. An explosion at Denel Somerset West arms factory has left 8 people dead. Now, Denel has just issued a statement. They say the plume of smoke that followed this afternoon's explosion is not dangerous to the public. All precautions are being taken. Investigations into the cause of the accident will be continuing at first light tomorrow. And that's your news. Take care. Good night.